So today is upper day. Today's upper day B. So no bench, no compound, and today I'm gonna focus on movements that will strengthen the parts that I feel like I'm the weakest in. So currently, for my physique, that'd be my shoulders, my traps, and low key my biceps too. So it's kind of what most of what today's going to be. I'm starting off with dumbbell lateral raises, and then I'll go into biceps and traps, and then another shoulder motion, and then I'll do one chest, one back motion because they've been getting a lot of the love lately, and I feel like it's showing. The neglect and other parts is showing, but it's currently 6:42. I got here at 6:31-ish and just finished my stretching and walking around and set up and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's what I've been up to so far. And I think it's about time to start. I gotta find the dumbbells. But I'll start with these 20s. Using the rubber ones because I like the way they feel better. And then go on, probably go up to like 35 or so. That felt good. Should have 30s, but I did not see 35s. But I'm not gonna start this yet. I gotta roll my body into gear. I'm still kind of waking up. So, but I think today I'm gonna have a topic to talk about so I can title my videos instead of just gym blog, So today's topic, I think I'm gonna talk about let's talk about relevant topics of the day, right? And by of the day, I mean like things that are going on in our lives presently. I think today I'm going to talk about designer babies and eugenics. I know, strange topic, but I think it's important to discuss these kinds of things, the things that people are doing and the things that aren't like readily available in the news and whatnot. So to start, designer babies are when someone takes the sperm and the egg, fertilize the egg, right? So that you have the zygote, right? A fertilized egg, and before it can mature into like a human baby, they'll put it in these little IVF tubes so that you can have the child later if you want, right? And they grow up in these tubes, and then they take them out, and it's like, here's your baby, rather than, the normal insemination process is through, traditional sex, and then the mother carries the fetus for 8 to 9 months. I think that's usually how it goes, 8 to 9 months. And then, she gives birth or, through the C-section. But with designer babies and IVF babies, which I've recently started calling tube children, is that one thing that you can do with them is, hold on. One thing that you can do with these designer babies is design them, right? Before they can truly begin to start that that I guess that cultivation process that would normally happen inside of the mother, inside of the oh, I'm blanking so bad, I'm sorry. But I know babies grow up in little sacks inside of their kids, and I forgot what that sack is called. But anyway, while they're growing up in that sack, you know, they would begin to take on traits of the mother and the father. But if you put them in the IVF tubes, you can do that as an option, essentially. You don't have to let your kid be made by natural selection. You know, you can go in and you can take certain aspects of you and of your mother or of the mother and take some out or put other ones in. You've got all the genetic material right there. And so science has gotten to a point that you can kind of just like pick parts that you want your kid to have. And apparently it's gotten to the point where you can even like not just pick how the kid will act in the future. Like you can predetermine certain personality traits, because some things like depression or extrovert or being an extrovert are genetic traits, right? More often than not, right? Because sometimes your parents can be extroverts, and then trauma comes in the way, and then they turn into introverts in their present lives, but in their past they were extroverts, and their parents may have been extroverts, stuff like that. Your mom may have been depressed, and her mom may have been depressed, and you're depressed. It's just a genetic thing. So you take those things out, right? So there's that, but you can also design how they look, right? So they could come out looking almost nothing like you, but have all of your genetic phenotypes or your genotypes, and it'll all be there. But the way that you decided to have the kid present those genotypes would make the phenotypes look different, right? Phenotypes are the physical traits in action, right? Well, the observable traits in action. And then even more so, you can kind of tweak their intelligence, right? Now, I don't know exactly how that one works, but I'm saying that you can make the kids smarter just by going in and paying. Oh yeah, it's like 10 grand upwards to do this, by the way, to customize your kid. But I'll get back to that in a second. Now it's time for bicep curls. So I guess we'll go 40. 40 and then 50. Yeah, that sounds about right. But while I'm resting, the reason why I wanted to start with designer babies for this topic is because if I went the other way around, it wouldn't really make sense, right? Because then you're like, well, where do designer babies come from? Why are people doing this? Stuff like that. Because that's what I would think if I were you. So let me tell you. The idea of a designer baby came from a few different reasons, and I'm going to start with my speculations before I get to things that I know concretely, right? My speculation, designer babies are a project that came from not like super rich people, but people who can kind of invest money nonchalantly into things like this, right? So that'd be people like let's say your father had a parent on either side who was a business owner, and then he inherited that business, and that business is doing still pretty well off, right? And then you were born, the business is still doing good. That kind of wealth is what I'm talking about. It's not like it just kind of came out of nowhere kind of wealth, but it's not like it's super duper old, because then you'd be like ultra wealthy. So people who are pretty well off, but not like rolling in it, right? But I decided to look into this not too long ago, so everything's still fairly recent for me. But Um, oh yeah. But our speculation is that people like that, the reason why they'd invest into something like this is because they want to secure their future through a genetic advantage, right? And why would they need that? It's probably because they're white, right? And white people, as an American entity, are running into a genetic bottleneck. So they gotta branch out, right? Otherwise, they run the risk of inbreeding unknowingly. And the only reason someone would know something like that in their own family is if they have extensive records of, you know, who they ended up getting with and stuff like that. And most families don't have records though like that. But the ones that do utilize it, right? Like the fact that, 48 of the 50 presidents that we've had so far are all related to, they're all related to a king of England whose name I'm forgetting. I want to say King James, King Charles the Third. That sounds kind of right, but they're all related to the current Windsor family somehow, right? Through their mothers and their fathers, but stuff like that, right? You wouldn't really know unless you had extensive records. But yeah, my speculation is that people are running out of genes and don't know where else to go, so they want to modify what they have left rather than interracial breeding. Since we're on the topic of race, right, I'd like to go out on a limb here, say that race isn't even a real thing for real. I don't know, when I say race probably isn't a real thing, most people's reactions is, what the hell is this guy talking about, right? And there's a reason why I say that. If you really think about it, you look at where they say humanity came from, and they say that the reason why people look differently is because of environmental genetic adaptations and stuff like that, right? So humanity first came from Africa, right? So they call it the cradle of humanity, if you didn't know, fun fact. And people had to spread out. Well, they didn't have to, but people spread out across what was Pangea, and so it's very easy to get from one place to another. And then, the earth started to move and evolve, and people were cut off from other people. They stayed there for a really long time in these places, and so they had to adapt, right? Oh, I'm looking for 55. There we go. And so they had to adapt to their environments, right? And so that's why African people usually have larger brows than people who are from East Asia or something like that, right? Well, there's a reason why people way up north, the Scandinavians, are like paler than people who come from the equator or below, right? It's because up there, there's a lot less UV rays. And so your skin, like your body over time will adapt to the traits it needs the most actively, right? And so for a time, what people had, or the northern peoples had greater flexibility and I wouldn't say greater martial skills because they weren't exactly like known to be better hunters or anything. But if I'm not mistaken, of the human groups that moved north, obviously the Homo sapiens were the ones that prevailed the most, dominant. Because there were other human groups that moved north, and They don't exist. And then along the equator, and I guess for most of humanity, that area, Mesopotamia, Northern Africa, West Asia, Central Asia, I guess like what's right below modern day Europe, that part, from what I know, is very well documented. And you've got the Aztecs in Central America. Yeah. And then the Native Americans doing what they do in North America, and then the Inuits, who came along much later, actually, in North America, and then South America. You had, I'm actually not too sure, but of all the different cultural groups, we'll stick to the old world, Africa, Asia, Europe, because those are the ones that I know the most, right? Okay. Whew, this high chair. But as I was saying, right, stick to the old world, because that's what I know the best. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, right, why people develop certain genetic traits and why we're all different, but trying to explain why at the end of the day, we're all actually, one race, one peoples, one species, which for some reason is something that a lot of people seem to not understand. You know what I mean? It's like the human race is one race. It's not like the black human race and the Asian human race. We're not different subsets of the same species, We're all under the same genus. We're all under, man. We're all under the same genus. We're all under the same species subgroup. So why can't we act that way? What's the point of all this needless division? I'll tell you. Money. But even then, there's no real point, because power doesn't naturally exist. It's the power structures that we've created as a people don't naturally exist unless you have some kind of genetic trait that makes it certain that you are the apex predator, right? And human beings don't have any apex traits other than thumbs and the ability to sweat and greater intelligence than most animals. So, as far as the Earth goes, sure, we're apex species, but not all of us are apex creatures, certainly. So, by that virtue of understanding that we need each other to be an apex species, you think it'd make more sense for us to band together, like our hunter-gatherer days. Even then, though, there was some kind of power hierarchy based on who was physically the strongest. And I think that made sense, because that was not a genetic adaptation, but an adaptation nonetheless to your environment, where you were able to, I guess, exploit your body so that you could become the strongest, and by being the strongest, you were the leader. Nowadays, there's no need for that, right? Because if we went by who was the strongest, it'd probably be some world's strongest man as president, or it'd probably be some fucking, what do they call it, triathlete for president, right? But no, we have elected representatives who do their jobs to represent the people. So it makes you wonder, why are things as bad as they are? Well, I'd argue, it's because people kind of forget that without each other, we are nothing. You know, let me get back to my original point. People migrated across the planet, stay there for a long time. Environment plays its part on your genes, and you develop certain traits, right? Arabs have more body hair to perspire and protect themselves from the sun. Um, Africans have larger brows to protect their eyes from the sun and darker skin to absorb more UV rays. Um, Scandinavian people have paler skin, less UV rays. Their bodies don't really need melanin to protect themselves, so they develop other traits like blue eyes, right? Or not blue eyes. So they developed. They don't have brown eyes. That's my point. Because blue eyes is a recessive trait. I forget which eyes Scandinavian people developed originally as a way to adapt to their environment, but their thing was eyes. Hair, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't really play that big a part. I think it just happened to change over time based off environment. But yeah, and then you've got the people along the equator. They're just naturally darker because that's where most of the sun hits, so they had to adapt the most. Africans, they ended up darker than most people because, well, that's kind of where things started. That's not a valid reason, but I think dark was first, and then things got lighter as time went on. But it's also outside of civilization, that being for the time period I'm talking about, that being like Mesopotamia and the Sumerian Empire, or the Sumerian civilization. I wouldn't really call it an empire. People didn't really build homes. People were still hunter and gathering. So there was no civilization as we know it for quite some time, right? And then, we skip to the present day. People have these various genetic adaptations still because, oh, hold on, I changed it. Because of the environments that our ancestors had to grow up in. And I think a lot of the times, we take these things for granted and we kind of forget where in the world they came from. So now we have some kind of background on why people want these designer babies, right? Or why people are divided, not the designer babies. Do our warm-up set. So how far back?
Oh man, actually,
So, where was that? Oh yeah. So the two ideas intertwine in the fact that if you can cut off a certain group on being able to create these superior children, then you effectively eliminate them as a subspecies. And I say subspecies because we all come from the same fucking family, But the perceived genetic division is deep enough where people believe or can believe or be able to be hypnotized into believing that we all belong to different families, different genus. But at the end of the day, that's just not how it works. So yeah, you eliminate groups by making it impossible for them to reproduce. Now, eugenics, designer babies, microplastics. You eat food wrapped in plastic bags, shipped in plastic bags, heated up in plastic containers. Eventually, those things begin to take a toll. Right? And I saw a study posted. If I can find it, I'll put it in the bio to this video, the description or whatever, where basically microplastics are in men and women's reproductive systems to the point where newly born and natural born children are experiencing physical deformities because there's a bunch of mud in your system, basically. And so kids go through this process and they come out lesser and lesser and lesser as the population of microplastics bloom on your insides. And so with all of that in everyone's systems, it's like IVF is the next step. Eventually it'll be the only step, as microplastics will begin to sterilize people, actually, as microplastics will start to invade, destroy, and eventually replace natural sperm. I don't know how it works in females' bodies or women's bodies, but I know that in males or guys, it sits like kind of at the bottom of the urinary tract because it's supposed to be left out for waste, and it doesn't get wasted, so it sits there, and then it'll move into the testes, and then it's just to commingle with your sperm, and it fucks it up, right? So there's that. And then give me a sec.
No, you can pay for it. Yeah, I know. I'm saying, but you know, it's $650. Like a half of it. I'm not even wrong. Like they probably, I guess, like the longer you, that's how much you got based on
We're gonna move on to overhead press, and then overhead press, and then we'll do shoulder shrugs, and then biceps, and then out of it. So as I was saying upstairs, this is the secret topic of today, the microplastics and our balls. When notice this started spreading, I remember a lot of people, well, not a lot, but a few people on social media saying that this was an attack to sterilize men until the study came out by women saying that it wasn't affecting just men and that women who were, being artificially inseminated with sperm that was around before the mass pollution of microplastics, they were also showing deformities in those women, so it's affecting both peoples, right? And so you get these IVF babies that are basically microplastic free for the most part, right? They can go through some kind of depollution process probably in the near future, but there's the fact that they are, for the most part, pretty well off families, and because I mean, to do this thing and to start with is an expensive process, so you think they'd be well off, but there's that on top of like how this microplastic epidemic began. It's just the mass use of plastics in everyday life. Everything you do, right? Plastics involved somehow, right? And it's like, well, I go to my way to avoid plastic and yada, yada, yada. There's plastic in your clothes. There's plastic in your water bottles. There's plastic in most of the foods that you eat. That's just how they're shipped around and moved, wrapped in plastic. Let's see, it's plastic in your shoes. If you're wearing like polyester, that is actually no, polyester is fine. It's like this, and it's some kind of stretchy material that's also made from crude oil, like plastic is, but I forget what it's called. But honestly, I'm kind of running out of things to say here about this particular topic, only because it's not something I'm the most well versed in. I just kind of wanted to talk about something different rather than being like, oh, fitness this, my life, my academic project, yada, yada, yada. So this is a way for me to kind of just talk about something random. I'm going to continue, for the rest of this video, but I wanted to just say really quick, if you liked what I had to say or didn't, let me know, stuff like that. Also, there was an editing mistake in, I think, the last video I made where I said I was going to post something above my hands and then I didn't. I did. It was there. But I guess when I exported the video, it didn't save that part because it's the last thing I did. So, it's my bad. But what do you guys think about the designer babies topic? I'm curious to see if other people are even aware about stuff like this, because it's been going on since, as far as I know, 2018, and the project has just been kind of pushed underground for a while, but it's still going on, and most companies are not saying anything at all, outright denying the claim that microplastics are ruining children. So, whatever that means. And then You know, you've also got to talk about how divided people are nowadays, when division, in my eyes, is completely unnecessary. Race is a manufactured idea pushed out by people who believe that they were above it, but only started it so that they can influence people who had smaller minds at the time. And without the use of social media, there's no way to communicate between races. And then people did start getting together, had multicultural environments, and you had classes being established, right? And class has been a thing long before race was, honestly. Because class started out, I would say class started out as a thing, I guess, for as long as you've had civilized nations, you know. You go back and look at Sumeria under Gilgamesh's rule and whomever came after him in the great city of Ur. As long as there was a king, there was class, because there had to be people below him, right? But class, as a manufactured idea to propagate the unnecessary, was a thing, in my eyes, right after the fall of, well, not right after, but I guess right after, I was going to say right after the fall of the Roman Empire, but that'd be wrong. They had class, and for the most part, it was kind of a tradition to keep things going that way. And then the empire fell, and then there was no real need to keep things going that same way, but people did. I would say right after the rise of the Frankish kingdom under Charlemagne is when class became an idea that didn't need to exist, right? Because you had this large swath of land ruled by a king who was crowned by the Roman Catholic Church, and they only did that to necessitate their own existence. And so they used the Frankish kings as puppets for a long time as a way to survive, right? But then you've also got the Frankish kings using that power given to them by the Roman Catholic Church to establish rule over other peoples who weren't Frankish, right? They expanded into, West Germania and northern Iberian Peninsula and the Lombardic region, which is northern France. So the Frankish peoples had a lot of land. Frankish people being the people of France, modern France. But they had a lot of land under Charlemagne and his relatives. Because, who was it? I'm trying to remember who came first. I think it was, Charles the Hammer. He came, and then Charlemagne, and then Pepin the Short. But I don't believe Pepin the Short was related to him. But they were, directly related to him, but they were still under the same Carolingian dynasty. But regardless, it didn't really, the idea of class didn't really need to exist. Didn't really need to exist if you had religion, right? If the only king is Christ, according to a lot of people, then why follow kings in the first place? But they did. They followed the Carolingian dynasty until it fell apart, and the new guys moved in, and they became the Carolings, I think. No, that doesn't sound right. I'm forgetting who came after Charlemagne and his descendants. But anyway, I'm some German guy. So, I got off topic a little bit, talking about Charlemagne and the Carolingians, but there was a reason. I was talking about the propagated idea of class and how it separates us, and how that separation has got us to the point where people believe that eugenics and genetic isolation and designer babies is a valid way to continue the human race, right? So class, right? Fake right after the establishment of Europe, more or less. And then became a thing. Oh yeah. And it became a thing for people to push their ideas in the modern period. And that class during the European age of exploration led to the idea of race, racial superiority, racial dominance, stuff like that. Okay? When, for the most part, the world outside of Europe was trying to learn how to get along. Look at the Islamic Golden Age. They were collaborating with people, other peoples rather, from West Asia, and the caliphate had expanded into Northern Africa. Well, not the caliphate, but one of them, I believe the Umayyads. And then you had people from China working with people from India, and there was this happy mingling going on all across the Asians and the Africas, right? And then you had the Europeans come down and fuck shit up, right? The Europeans were cannibalizing each other's cultures and each other's differences to the point where most people just call European people white, right? White people came from the disillusion of cultural differences, right? And you think it's a good thing, right? If there's no cultural differences, then it's like, oh, we're all one happy people. But if people don't have a way to separate themselves into something unique, then it's like you're looking for something else. For example, I think it was Zara and what do they call it? I forgot, but they had some whitewash name for afros, right? And Zara is a European company, and because Europeans haven't innovated anything recently as far as fashion goes, they decided to eat other people's stuff. There's that cannibalization process, right? And so now you see it because they have no cultural differences between each other, and they're so commingled that the only real differences they have is on a super local level, right? There's no national differences between most European nations, in my opinion, right? Now, sure, you could say Germans are different from Frankish peoples, but genetically, you guys are all cousins, so what does it matter, right? And even culturally, you guys share a lot of the same stuff. And it's just like, you guys are enemies because you guys are so close to each other, you guys share the same stuff, right? It's like two children fighting over one toy, and that toy happens to be Europe in this case. So then, when you look at the golden age of exploration, then you've got Europeans coming down to Africa and seeing that there are different peoples, right? You got Europeans acknowledging that the Islamic world exists, and the first thing that they do is attack it, right? And so then it's like, how can European people say that they are the dominant force in the world when a lot of, if not most of the things that you have taken credit for have come from other peoples, right? And even if it was your own, say like Edison's light bulb, right? I'm more than certain the idea came from someone that wasn't Edison, or at least the idea behind it, because people had light bulbs before the founding of America. They just didn't really have the modern idea of a light bulb. Ooh, my hand. It's Edison's ghost, guys. It's coming to get me. Ooh. Oof. One more bicep exercise and then we're done. But yeah, you've got cultural cannibalization and the want to be different, and it gets you nowhere. So celebrating people's differences is a healthy thing, and I think it should be something that's done more often. need to get another plate. But another thing I wanted to talk about in regards to this one long topic I've been going on about is the fact that, you know, other cultures like well, I guess it's rude to call it one culture because it's actually, I want to say 20, 30 some different cultures, 30 different distinct cultures in the African continent, I believe. I could be super wrong, but each of them being culturally distinct, having their own histories and stuff. They have also done the same thing Europeans have done with the cannibalization of each other, but they left cultures intact. They didn't burn villages. Well, they did burn villages to the ground, like the Europeans actually. But what they didn't do was consume cultures and engage in prolonged forever wars, right? Like the Proto-European peoples. And I say proto because when I say European, in this context, I'm talking about what came before Charlemagne and his descendants. I'm talking about African continent long before Charlemagne had come to ruins or come to pass. So I'm talking about the period that was just right after the fall of the Roman Empire, and African people were kind of just left to do their own thing for a while, right? Before the Islamic world came to the northern part of the continent. But I bring that point up because I wanted to talk about how, you know, I've been bashing Europeans and stuff, and it's like rightfully so. You know, a lot of you guys aren't the best kind of people, but historically, I mean, not presently. I don't know any of you presently, for real. But African peoples or peoples of the continent have also done similar things, and I think the proper way to celebrate each other's differences is to honor each other's pasts, and no one has a clean past, right? You look at the Chinese empires through time, the Chinese dynasties and whatnot through time. They've all done terrible things to the Uyghurs or to people that weren't Han Chinese, or to Korea or to Japan. They've all done terrible things. The Japanese have done some terrible shit. I can't think of anything about Indian empires of the past at the moment, but I know that Russians, or the people from the area of modern Russia, have done terrible things in the past. So, as I said, no one's clean. Ow, that hurt my chest. Yeah, no one's clean. I think everybody should just learn to get along. And yes, I'll still name this video Eugenics and Designer Vegas Gym Blog 11, because that's what I talked about. And I think I will go on and have more themed videos going forward. But please let me know what it is that you want to see from these themed videos, and I will do what I can. Unlike this one, I will actually do my research before I start talking. This one was mostly based off of memory and prior knowledge and speculation. So next time, I will be more informed to give you guys the rundown. Or maybe you guys just want me to talk more about my life and what I'm doing and just keep it on the gym stuff. I don't know. You let me know. But better go to the posing room, see what's up. Looks like a decent deal. All right, here we are. Whew. Yeah, that's some nice shoulders right there. Only one back motion, one chest motion, but for good reason, you know. See what the back looks like. Alright. Let's get this thing off, man. So here we are at the end of another video. Whew. You know, as it goes towards the end of these videos, if there's anything out here that you like, let me know. If there's something more that you want to see, let me know. And if today's topic was interesting to you, let me know. I think maybe making videos with topics would probably be more interesting than me talking about nothing the entire time and listening to my huffing and puffing. But maybe I'm wrong. I'm new to this game. So, let me know. Shoulders are looking fairly decent today, though, I won't lie. But, yeah. If you like this video, give it a like. And maybe a comment if you have the time. Go ahead and share, too. But as with everything, you know,